Morning. Good morning, Paul. I think that we've got everybody, Lawrence.
Except, oh, Jim, I can see Jim as well.
Yeah, Jim's there.
Then let's start. Good morning and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Board of Directors, the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, which is being live streamed on YouTube. In addition to the participating board directors and interim leadership team, I'm pleased to welcome our virtual audience and thank you for joining us. Let me begin with the land acknowledgement. As a City of Toronto Corporation, the Board of Directors acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. The board also acknowledges that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty is signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We have a very full agenda today, reflecting the significant work so far done and also the work underway to prepare for the organization to become operational on June 1st. I want to thank the transition team for the preparation of the materials brought forward and the board directors for your reading and consideration of those materials in preparation for the important discussions we will have today. We do not have any requests for deputations today. May I now have a motion for approval of the public meeting agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by
Warren.
And seconded by Brenda. All in favor? Carried. Our next item will be the declaration of conflict of interest. Would any member of the board like to declare any conflict of interest? Having heard none, let us move to the next item on the agenda. That is the approval of the public meeting minutes of February 23, 2022.
So moved by Paul.
We need a seconder. By Linda. All in favor? Yeah, carried. Our next item will be item number 5. That's approval of the closed session meeting minutes of February 23, 2022. We need a.
So moved, Carrie.
Moved by Carrie and seconded by
Warren.
Warren. All in favor? Carried. The next item, item number 6, will be a motion to move into closed session. Again, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Brenda.
Second.
And seconded by Carrie. All in favor? Carried. So we are moving into closed session now.
We'll just
Councillor Ainsley. All in favor? Carried. So we'll be moving to the public session now.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave the meeting at this time. It's Councillor Fletcher. So thank you for all your work, everybody. And see you at the next one. Great job. Bye.
Live streaming is on.
Okay. So item number 14, welcome back to the public session. Item number 14, the approval of the closed session decisions we have taken. First one is an appointment of the President and CEO. Need a mover. That's Councillor Ainsley, and a seconder. That's Linda. All in favor? Yes, carried. So the next motion will be the ratification of the MOA signed with the CUP Local 79. Again, I need a mover. That's Jim, and seconded by Brenda. All in favor? Carried. The next one, that's approval of corporate human resources policies, leaves and fair wage. Again, we need a mover. Brenda moves it and is seconded by
Carrie?
Carrie. Thank you. All in favor? Yes, it's carried. The next one is an approval of our transition agreement term sheet. Again, I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Brenda and seconded by Jim. All in favor? Carried. Next one is approval of the service delivery agreement term sheet. Again, Brenda moved and seconded by
Carrie?
Carrie. All in favor? It's carried. The final one, approval of the operating agreement and funding model. Need a mover? That's Brenda, and seconded by Linda. All in favor? Carried. Well, the next move to the item number 23. That's the action items list. Can we have it on the screen if it's possible? Rajini, is it possible to display the?
Give me a moment. I have to find it. Hold on a second.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think we have some incomplete items. Probably we can walk through, and if they're not relevant, we can delete them. If you have papers in front of you, I mean, the item 4 that was dated. That's from the meeting of June 30th of last year. TSHC have some elected tenants, so need a list of current tenants, elect, and where there are missing positions.
Yeah.
We still need that listing, right?
I think maybe I can speak to that, Lawrence. I think the issue there, which we discussed at the time, was that Toronto Community Housing are not in a position to provide us with tenant names. And until we take over as landlord, what we do have, and we discussed this at the last meeting, was the list of buildings and the process that had been undergone at each of the buildings with respect to tenant representatives, and actually Arlene's gone through the process of making sure that that is complete. Once we go through the transition on June 1st, we will have access, of course, to the tenant information, and we'll be able to use it at that time.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Wondering, instead of leaving it blank, can we have some kind of a comment or some status probably?
Yeah, I think what might be appropriate there is we'll just put pending transition,
Okay.
and then we'll get that list.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's Carrie.
Yeah. Just to be clear, we understand not being able to have the actual tenant names until until they are our tenants, but we don't have the current or the full list. We were provided in an earlier meeting with a list of phase 3 of
Right.
various buildings. We don't have the previous ones, and I know, Arlene, it's like root canal to try to get this information. But that's what
Want to
we
give an
are.
update, Arlene, as to where that is?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, we have an updated list for phase 1 through 3.
Great.
And Carrie, thank you for your eagle eyes in our QTE meeting. So that'll be coming forward to our next QTE meeting on April the 12th.
Wonderful.
to answer that question, and then that would be brought forward to the board.
Great. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Thank you. There's item number.
Paul has a hand up, Lawrence.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Yep, Mr. Chair, just on item 14, which was
Yeah.
access to the recreational facilities, that is certainly being discussed and addressed through the work with STAC and other senior engagement, and it will form part of, I'm sure, the recommendations that come forward to this board around an engagement model. So we did follow up with that. We've had lots of feedback around that, and so process-wise, that will come back to this board as part of the ongoing work we're doing with STAC to provide recommendations on the engagement model.
Great.
Thank you. I think there's the next item of 15 as well.
I think Brenda also had a
Brenda,
question.
yeah, okay. Brenda, you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah. Paul Johnson, that is. I think there was a discussion about doing some sort of inventory of what space was available in the various buildings. And I don't know if you were able to see to that. And I had also asked that in addition to common or recreational space, that some sort of inventory about possible available office space, because if we're going to be doing any shared, integrated service management with outside agencies, et cetera, they'll need space, right? So I don't know if that was anything followed up on.
So in terms of that full inventory, we'll need to bring that back in a presentation as well. So yeah, there's two parts to this very much, Brenda. The one is the concerns about access that were raised.
Yes, I realize that.
By tenants,
yeah.
and
Yes.
so I think that's been addressed. The other piece about that scan is now underway as we look through the reopening of these spaces, and we've uncovered some construction that's happening. So I'll work with the seniors housing unit and Grant to make sure that work of the inventory is ongoing, and again can probably be presented as part of that package that's coming back through the engagement with the seniors work. I think that'll be important for us to understand as a board, looking at ISM and looking at ongoing work that's happening. So yes, not lost the technical work as well, Brenda.
All right, thank you.
The next item is number 15. I think I see Mr. Johnson's name.
Yes, and I think, Mr. Chair, I'll continue to work with Grant. There's a piece of reporting that needs to come back, which has a broad amount of issues in it, and my apologies that they haven't been back to present on this earlier. I'll follow up with staff and see what we can bring. It feeds into Brenda's last comments about needing some of that technical data, and so I'll check in with Michael and his team and Grant, and we'll try and get that presentation within the next couple of months so that folks have a good baseline.
Thank you. That's item number 22, update ELT organization chart. Michael?
What's ELT? Sorry.
This is the
Executive leadership team?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
That's right. And I think we were just going to bring forward as you know, we'll be working with the new CEO, and the new CEO will be working with the board with respect to the leadership structure that they will put in place in consultation with the city as well, with respect to what that leadership structure will look like. So now that the CEO appointment can proceed or is proceeding, they'll be able to start that work with you, and we will assist as necessary as the transition team in the work. And we've had some discussions at the board prior around some notional structures that we think may be helpful, and I'm sure there'll be some potential modifications of that in the discussions that the board will have going forward. As you know, in lieu of the leadership team structure, the board did approve some key positions below that leadership level structure for recruitment, and those recruitments are proceeding now in terms of the work to get those positions in place as soon as possible, so that the key infrastructure for the corporation in conducting the affairs of the corporation, once we become operational, and the transfer of the staff that are coming over from Toronto community housing can take place. One of the things that we are considering at the moment is that it will take some time, I'm sure, for the CEO to put a new leadership team in place. And so when we become operational on June 1st, we'll have the staff coming over from Toronto Community Housing. We'll have the CEO in place. We'll have the transition team, and then there'll be the recruitment, I'm sure, with the CEO of the leadership team. So we're going to have a transition period where we'll want to make sure that we understand the accountability structure within the organization, which won't be the final one until, of course, that leadership structure is being put in place. And so we're planning now as to just to make sure that the board can be comfortable that we've got a leadership structure in place that can manage the affairs of the corporation as that final leadership team gets put in place with the CEO.
Michael, who does the hiring of the other positions, the level we approve below the
So
seniors?
the transition team are managing that at the moment, and now that the CEO has been appointed, even prior to their start date, we'll be able to engage, I hope, the new CEO in those recruitments so that they're aware of what's going on and can be informed or participate as much as possible, because I think that's going to be important. So we'll engage them in those recruitments, but it'll be largely managed by the transition team. We're actually using the machinery at Toronto Community Housing for those recruitments in terms of the human resources platform that they have in place, but the transition team will be overseeing those recruitments, as I say, with as much input with the CEO as possible.
So the advertising of the positions is Toronto Community Housing, and they are doing the short listing or the sorting through of the applicants on our behalf?
They will help us, but we will be overseeing all aspects of that recruitment. But we'll be using their platform. They'll be advertised as positions for us.
Okay. And will we be writing some sort of preamble to those job ads to reflect the seniors?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want the tone and messaging to be a little different if possible. And when you say transition team, what does that mean? You and Helena and whoever else you can drag into an interview?
Yes, our small team. Well, as you know, there are different areas. They're in
there's IT and
services,
financial.
So Norm will be
right.
very much on top of the financial positions, as you can imagine. So the whole team is involved in those recruitments. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Moving to item 20.
Sorry, I just think Helena wanted to make a comment.
Sorry, I focused on my papers in my hand. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. If I may, to maybe give some assurance to Brenda as well, is that we looked at the wording for the advertising, Brenda, to ensure that it does have a seniors housing look and feel, and it'll be posted as Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, with community housing providing, as Michael was saying, the engine for it. So it'll be very clear that it is seniors housing postings and positions. And we were very clear on the wording for the postings as well. So I think that would meet your comments that you raised, Brenda.
Okay, good. I appreciate that because I want it to have a different feel and look and the seniors focus. Will we be using other platforms like Indeed or other posting places, or we just stick with the TSHC platform, and or how broad are we sending out these job specs?
It's right. So we'll be using, of course, LinkedIn and on our website, and then each hiring lead can determine where they feel they would also like to post, and so we will be posting on some of those greater sites as well.
So we will be using greater
That's
sites.
correct. Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay.
And looking for a good range of diversity organizations as well.
Oh, so you'll be sending it to them as well?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Be nice to know just the broad range of where these ads go, you know, how far we cast our net and who is it picking up or not. So we can then analyze whether it's effective going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Thank you. So moving to the item 25, I think Mr. Rees has briefed the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee on these financial flow funds from the city and tenants. Should we say it's completed, or Norm, would you like to speak, or I think we have?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The funds for June 1 to December 31, we have, Michael and I have provided some material to the city, to Paul, and a slide deck and so on. And we have, I think we provided all the information that they need in order to take forward the dollars for that period of time. And the city assures us that to the extent that that amount needs to be topped up a bit, that they'll be there for us. So I think we're in a good place to move forward on that matter.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, so next item is item 26. I think it's Councillor Ainsley now responsible for this. The full list of policies being.
Thank you, Lawrence. Once again, we had a very comprehensive meeting, lots of input and discussion. I'm very happy with the policies that the committee approved, and they're before us today for approval. If anybody have any questions, I'm more than happy to take them. And I would like to acknowledge all of the work that Warren did. I've taken over as chair, or transitioning in as chair. I'd just like to thank Warren for all of the work that he's done to date as chair of the committee. And I know I've got big shoes to fill, and I'm going to do my best. Thank you. Mary?
Yes, just to remind the board that there was a full list of policies provided in your package in February. We are doing a final double check with TSHC today to make sure we've got them all, but I'm pretty sure that list that you have is very comprehensive.
Thanks, Mary. Brenda?
Paul, I'm a little confused. There were whole sections that we had discussed and decided not to include under various, remember the conduct policy, and I'm just a little confused. What's presented here is what we agreed to, minus the things we wanted excluded out? Because I saw some of the same language that we were not
Sorry,
happy.
what page are you looking at, Brenda?
Well, I'm a little confused. That's why I read it and I just couldn't figure out what I just want to make sure that that intention was incorporated.
Yep.
Okay.
just scrolling back down myself.
Yeah. And I don't have my original notes in front of me, so I apologize for that, but it just sounded like almost the same thing that we were disagreeing with. Okay. So the red line version are the changes we implemented that were then incorporated into the other version. Is that how it
Yes.
works? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Red line, or mine seems to be blue for some reason.
Yeah, mine's blue too. So actually, it was a little green in there too.
Now we got purple.
Yeah, yeah. Who did that? Warren, was that your contribution?
That was probably
that you,
my
Michael?
lack of, yeah, it was probably my lack of ability on the colors. So take that, red line means any color other than black.
Okay.
Yeah, the word assigns different colors to each one.
Yes, okay. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure. That's all I have to ask. Thanks.
I think we're good.
Yeah, thank you. Shall we move to item 28?
Sorry, do we need a motion to approve, Lawrence?
I think, Lawrence, are you still on the action list or?
Yeah, I'm on the action list. Sorry, sorry. I'm going on.
I think
to
there's
the
a bit of
action list.
confusion, Paul.
Okay,
I think we're not on the actual agenda item
Yeah,
yet. I think
sorry
Lawrence is
about
still
that.
going through the action
Go
list.
through the action list just to clear that. So action list item.
Oh,
28.
okay. All right. My apologies.
Okay, fine.
I was confused too.
Sorry. I thought I'll just go through the entire list and then clean it up. Item number 28 on the action item, salary scale and position summary list of new hires. Ms. Ferreira. We don't have Helena?
Yeah, so I think we probably in a position now, Helena, to provide that back to the board on these are the positions that were approved by the board, I think, and just reporting back to the board what we're going to end up with in terms of the titles and salary scales.
Okay, thank you. And the last item, the oversight by the City of Toronto COI. Mr. Sherrar, the last item on the action items.
Yes, as you'll recall, when we approved the conflict of interest policy at the last board meeting, I was asked to just refer that back to the city to check with their comfort. I actually just heard back from them yesterday, and largely they're comfortable with the COI. They made one suggestion of revision, which is actually connected to a policy that we are going to consider today that Councillor Ainsley is going to talk to, which is the Code of Conduct policy. And so they've referenced in their suggestion, because they've seen the draft Code of Conduct policy as well, that there's a reference back and forth. So it would depend on the Code of Conduct policy being passed. So once, if the Code of Conduct policy gets passed today, then I'll just go back to the Corporate Governance Committee with the suggested revision by the city for the conflict of interest policy, and we could bring that forward if the Corporate Governance Committee agree back at the next meeting. But other than that, which I would term a relatively minor suggestion, the conflict of interest policy as written was received favorably by the city.
Thank you, Michael. So we are finished with the action. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
That was it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So we are finished with the action item list. So we'll go back to the agenda item 16. That's the transition leads report. Michael.
Well, thank you, Lawrence, and I'll be brief. Just a terrifically important meeting today. Of course, with the key agreements with Toronto Community Housing and the term sheets therein approved, CEO appointment approved, and the agreement with Local 79 of QP ratified. And I just wanted to thank the board because along with that very important milestone for this meeting for the corporation, which really sets us up for our launch on June 1st. And I'll talk a little bit about the work to be done before that, but it really does set that now very firmly on track. And I just want to thank the board because of the amount of material over the last few months and with the orientation sessions that you've had to go through to make sure that we can be successful and that you can provide the due diligence and the comfort of the board working in consultation with the city that we're going to achieve a smooth, successful and high quality transition on June 1st. So thank you very much for just a terrific amount of work. I want to thank the transition team as well, and all of them, Helena, Norm, Arlene, Mary, Rajni, and all of the rest of the transition team that we've had in place for their work in getting the materials in a way that can promote the right discussions at the board and good questions for us as we go into a transition. And then also really acknowledge our partners at Toronto Community Housing. As Paul has mentioned, there was a lot of work, and you know, we have the advantage at Toronto Seniors Housing and Transition Team that this is everything that we do, and it's all we have to focus on. At Toronto Community Housing, they got a lot of other work, of course, that they're doing, as well as supporting us as a new corporation and all of the agreements that we have to get in place. And it's been, as Paul said, a lot of work, a lot of negotiation and discussion, and some of those, you know, have taken a lot of work to get through. So I really want to acknowledge JAG and the whole team and the board at Toronto Community Housing in going along this journey with us, as I say, with a lot of other work and priorities that they have as a corporation that they have to think about as well. So now that I think we've got through some major milestones today, the transition team is really focusing very much now on all of the logistical and operational issues that need to be in place for June 1st to make sure that our staff, as they come over, are supported to provide high quality services as they do now to our tenants through that June 1st transition date. We're really very excited to welcome all of the staff in. My sense in talking to them, and Helena and I have spoken with them, is that they're very keen to come to Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation, and I think you've seen that in the smoothness with which we've been able to achieve agreements with the union staff and the non-union staff with respect to the transition. A lot of excitement about joining the new corporation, and we're very excited with the new CEO, obviously, to start to be able to work with them in a much closer way after transition, as they'll be our employees. So we want to make sure, working with Toronto Community Housing again, who've been terrific partners, and making sure that all of the things that need to be in place are in place, so that as they do become our employees, there's no interruption to their work, and we can start as a new corporation working gradually with them to have that focus on the needs of seniors tenants in our buildings. As I've mentioned before, on the leadership structure, even though we will have a new CEO in place, it's going to take a little while, I think, for the new CEO to be able to build the leadership team. We'll have the staff coming over, we'll have the transition team, and so we want to make sure, working with the CEO, that we can be as helpful as possible to them, and to make sure that we have a continuity of accountability and leadership in place to support us as we become operational. We're thinking about the priorities that as the new corporation becomes operational, that are going to be important, and then thinking further down the road in terms of supporting the thinking and planning for a more fulsome strategic planning by the new organization into the fall, working with Toronto Community Housing towards the new fiscal year in 2023, and that's going to be very important in terms of the lease agreement that we're committing to have completed, and the work with the city to understand what a full annualized budget might look like for 2023. So although we've reached, I think, a terrific milestone today, a lot of work to make sure that we're successful on June 1st, and then the work with within the new corporation and with our partners at Toronto Community Housing to make sure that we can be successful as the new corporation is able to plan for the future. So I think I'll leave it there, Lawrence, and happy to take any questions that the board may have. Brenda.
Thanks. Couple things. Thank you to you, Michael, and staff for the orientation or background or meetings. I can't remember what we called them. I think those were very helpful. I mean, I know it's a burden to have extra meetings, but it does allow for lots of details and questions that we often miss with the shortened time of a board meeting. So I think that's a good way to go in the future for things that are complex, you know, because it allows people to really get a handle on things. And as we're also new in a new corporation, I think so much the better, right? The other question I had was, we were supposed to have a sort of board member to board member meeting between Toronto Community Housing, Toronto C. Has that happened?
It hasn't, Brenda. As you know, we passed at the board the intent to create a joint transition work group.
Yeah.
And as they did at the Toronto Community Housing Board, my understanding from Toronto Community Housing is that they have not yet selected the board members who will be part of that. So we haven't yet been able to launch it, but I think it will be, you know, even though we're getting close to transition now, I think it still will be a useful mechanism for members of both boards to hear about progress through the transition. So we'll continue to follow up to see if we can.
Would it take a different form after June 1st? I mean, I don't want to
we could certainly look at the terms of reference, but I think in general, you know, it's an informal mechanism. There's no decision making to be taking place there, but I do think it's a way of bringing board members from both corporations together in one kind of information session, and we're going to be partners long into the future with community housing. So I think the idea that the boards get to know each other a little bit, and that's a mechanism to do that, I think will be helpful. So we'll certainly follow up, and it's something that Paul and the city have said that they think will be helpful and that we should get going. And so I'll certainly follow up on that, Brenda.
And my last comment was about strategic planning process. Where does that get lodged in our organization? I noticed some reference was made to it in the report of the tenant engagement, and I'm just wondering, that's a huge extra burden on an already overtasked committee. Not that I want to be creating more and more committees, but it seems to me something like strategic planning might be something suitable for a standalone. I don't know.
We've discussed a little bit. I mean, it's really a key function of the board working
Yeah.
with the CEO and partners to establish that strategic plan.
Yeah.
We have nested the overall kind of oversight of it with the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee. It's in the terms of reference there, but it does become really a function of the whole board. And I think, although the committee will kind of oversee the process, and I think that can be very helpful for the CEO and staff in terms of going through what the process might be, I'm sure that the whole board will be engaged in that process once it gets going. But I think it's a good place for it to start at the committee in terms of the planning process. And I think Linda has a...
Yeah, just to jump in, I every once in a while remind myself that we're not even a corporation yet.
Yeah.
And that for me, it's really important that we get this, like that CEO, and with the tenant engagement piece too, I'm reminded of that we don't stop doing the work on June 1st.
No.
And I think we would be too early to actually engage in the strategic planning. I think our committee is fine with being a conduit to the strategic planning. But of course, you're right, Brenda, that it's a whole board function, and I think it's a key CEO deliverable that like the CEO is going to have to help the board chair around creating a strategic plan. But I honestly think that for me, I think we need to get through the first quarter or two to actually just make sure that we're meeting the tenants' needs in terms of the basics. And I think we'll just be much better prepared to actually then engage in our strategic goals for kind of like as we go on.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it's also useful to do it when you have the new CEO, because his task is that forward orientation, future planning, and decisions we make now will have impact, of course, further down the road. So from
a budgeting point of view, Brenda, and the planning point of view, notionally, we have anticipated that this might start in Q4 of 2022 and go into quarters 1 and 2, probably at least of 2023.
Good. Okay. Just as long as we don't lose sight of it. Thank you.
Okay. If we don't have any other comments or questions, we'll move to the next item. That's 17A, report from the Quality, Tenant and Engagement Committee. Linda.
Yeah, there's a few items that we want to cover here. Just actually in general, I wanted to let people know that the Tenant Engagement Quality Committee did meet again for a second meeting. We have a few things for approval, and I don't have my list up, but the in terms of getting the terms of reference approved is maybe the first piece. The terms of reference were reviewed at our committee meeting, and we would like to actually bring them forward to the board. I think the board actually had a chance to take a look at them. There's 2 small items that are highlighted that are not substantive. I think the biggest thing that I would say is that as an organization that's just actually coming to understand it, what the work will look like, that they're dynamic, and that we have a chance to review every 6 months. So that's one item that we would actually like for approval from the board. So maybe a motion.
So I think we have a motion for that particular item, and we could do that, Lawrence, before we move on.
Yeah, we have got a...
Where is that document in our board bundle? And frankly,
it's right in it's in the big document. It's 17B.
17B,
and it's attached to that. I'm just looking at it myself because I don't have my second screen up, Carrie.
Yeah, I do have mine now too. So what page number? Is that possible?
Yeah, it is actually page 113.
Okay.
Of 154.
Yeah.
113.
Yeah.
Lordy. Not that I can find it because I can't. Okay.
And to be honest, the committee has actually the committee has approved them. We're really looking to the board to formally approve the
Right.
terms of reference,
Yeah.
but there is not a substantive change from what you saw previously.
That's right. Will you be talking about the tenant engagement
That's
survey?
Yeah, that's the next item. So I think
Oh,
we're
great.
going to have Arlene present on that, but I wanted to just make sure that we got the terms of reference approved.
Sure.
So I'm going to, can I put a motion out that for approval for these terms of reference?
And I'll second it.
Thanks, Carrie. All in favor?
Found it.
Thank you.
Found
Just kind of moving it forward. Sorry, Chair.
Yeah.
And then the other item that I think that I'd love the board to hear from is Arlene. Has been engaging in tenant focus groups, and I think it's and some of this was presented. I think it was really very reassuring to me to see how much work is actually happening on many fronts. And I know that our tenants don't feel like they're, yet fully engaged in decision making and planning. And I think actually keeping up, like we're making sure that we're transparent on what is actually occurring. And Arlene has a presentation that I think she wants to go through to give the board an update on those focus groups, not to be confused with STAC and not to be confused with the work that's happening on the hub models, because so there's a lot of things that are happening. And Arlene actually did come to STAC. I was actually really, it felt that, and Arlene has actually been making a lot of efforts to engage members from STAC in the actual, focus group. So is it okay if I pass it over to Arlene at this point to do that presentation, Lawrence?
Yeah, please go ahead. Arlene.
Thank you so much, Linda. And I know that everyone's had a chance to go through the materials, so I'm just going to touch down on a couple of key pieces. I wanted to just touch down on, first of all, to acknowledge that when our report was taken to QTE committee, Maureen Clohessy, who happens to be a tenant representative and a member of STAC, was kind enough to partner and bring that report forward. She was also kind enough to partner in facilitating the focus groups when we had them back in January and February. And so we did a call out to all STAC members to ask them if they would be willing and interested in co-facilitating any of the focus groups that we had back in January. And Maureen stepped forward, so we worked with her, and then I worked with her in drafting the information that came forward to QTE, which constitutes the information that you see now. So in terms of the key themes that came out of the focus groups and the subsequent follow-up survey, there was identified some areas for improvement. The areas that were identified in the original ISM survey that was done back in 2020, they were still valid because the basis of our conversation with the tenants was work that was done previously by TSHC, and we just wanted to validate whether the same concepts held true, the same issues held true as we move forward into Toronto Seniors Housing. And they said, yes, in fact, the challenges are still the same. And so we validated that. They also noted that the need for health, wellness, and day-to-day living supports were heightened by the pandemic. So isolation and social and mental health supports are actually very important. And I just wanted to note that in a follow-up conversation that I had with STAC last week, one of the terms that was challenged was the term wellness, and whether or not we need to be considering well-being versus wellness. So that's something I think the corporation to consider as we move forward, because for at least one or two of our 15,000 tenants, that term sort of, it was a cause for pause. But I think we probably have to do some work around defining what is the difference between wellness and well-being. But it was raised as a point of feedback from STAC that I just wanted to bring back to this table because I thought it was an important point that was raised. And then also that tenants need help preparing for services such as pest control and various other things. While these services are good in the provision of services, and of course there's always area to improve, the key challenge that senior tenants face is the before and after. There's a bit of an expectation that they can manage, both bookends, and they're saying, in fact, we really can't. For some, not all. They're saying we really can't handle the removal of then the cleaning that happens, or the spraying that happens, and then the replacement of items back into their various places in their homes. It was also identified, also in the conversation that I had with Stack afterwards, that some people might actually look for temporary housing because of the pesticide spray. So there was some concern about, their ability to actually be in the unit while this spraying was done and it settles, so that they can actually get on with their lives again. So I also wanted to bring that forward, and I'll go through the presentation, like the pieces that I'm going to touch down on. But Carrie and Linda, you would have heard some of this feedback when I took it to Stack. So if there's anything you want to add, please feel free to jump in. And then senior tenants would like staff to have a better understanding of the ever-changing challenges of aging. And I think that is that's ongoing work. And I'll talk about that in terms of recommendations and how the staff see that being dealt with. And then there was also some feedback around consistent staffing to help seniors feel more secure and help to build trust. One of the more positive things, I think, going into June 1 and beyond is that we have the same staff. These relationships that have been forged over time are in place. And so what seniors can count on is that these important relationships continue to be there to support them. And they're also growing with the introduction of the ISM model. There will be additional supports available to senior tenants, but that the fact that our staff will be transitioning wholesale is actually, I think, very good news for senior tenants, because those relationships are valuable and important. And then the lived experience for those that are able versus those that are less abled is quite different. And you'll note that in the report that and abilities, for those of us that are continuing to learn in this area, abilities can be visible and invisible. Right. And so I think that's something that there's still a tremendous amount of work to be done on, because we think about abilities, we sometimes think about accessibility of the height of things, whether they're wheelchair accessible, things like that. But they're really, in the report, it talked about other areas like auditory needs and visual needs and mental health needs that make people less able than others. So I think those are important things as the corporation moves forward to consider. And then the common spaces for tenant activities are important because it builds community and reduces isolation. I think there was a great big cheer of relief about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, when tenants were able to gather again, and the space restrictions were lifted. So there was a good sense of life can resume, normal activities can resume, and also people can get back to socializing, because there's so much isolation in the space, with so many senior tenants being single people, not necessarily couples. So that was actually good news. And then the language barriers continues to impact a senior tenant for whom English is not their first language. And this is something that we're trying really to focus on as we move forward. This is no small challenge, as you can imagine. I think this is something that's going to come back to the board by way of looking at the budget moving forward, because translation services, we're probably going to need to do some additional work in that. When I started in this transition back in September, we were told that there were 10 major languages we have to be able to communicate to senior tenants in. It's been updated to 13, and we continue to do the work to prepare to better communicate with those 13 languages. So there will be updates to our website to reflect that. There will be, online translation on our website as we move to updating it to be able to reflect that. But also in our print communications, we really have to become very creative about how we can provide information to tenants moving forward. So as we talk about the packages that we're sending out in the April-May timeframe to prepare tenants, we're really trying to push for, rather than saying this information is available to you in your language if you need it. Well, I'm saying they don't know what information they're missing to know what
That's
they need.
right. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. So I've asked if we could put in a blurb that says this information is about this, 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 and this. We are able to provide it to you in a translated version or an interpreted version. Please contact us, as opposed to them trying to figure out I don't know if this is important or not, right? So we're going to try to do a better job of identifying what each communications, the relevancy is to the tenant, so that they can then make the choice to have that information sent out to them, delivered to them. In an ideal world, it would be available in every language all the time. We recognize that, but it's something I think we're going to have to work towards, not something we can fix immediately. So those were some of the key themes. And then we went down into sort of a recommendation summary, which talked about what were the 3 key priority areas that were what tenants were saying Toronto Seniors Housing needs to focus on in the first 100 days and beyond. And I just want to pause just for a minute on this first 100 days and beyond, because one of the things I said to the focus group participants and to STAC is that there are a lot of priorities for this corporation moving forward. And while we will pick, 27 or so that we want to focus on, recognize that none of these problems are going to be solved in the first 100 days. They are an area of focus, but they're not going to be solved, because what you told us at the very beginning was after 2 years of work that has been ongoing to deal with the priorities that are the same as what was identified, there's still more work to do. So it's really, we've been trying to really manage expectations around this, the pace at which we can really accomplish some of these, and what does the baseline look like, and then what does success look like from there moving forward. So in terms of recommendations, the items that are in gray, those are the areas that in conversation with Toronto Community Housing staff, they have identified as areas that we would be able to begin to address in the first 100 days, sharpen our focus on some of these key areas, such as helping tenants with how to file taxes and various forms, increasing group interaction for mental health, increasing the staff training around, dealing with older adults, and then looking more closely at safety and security issues. Also, to support this work, we've asked for our next QTE meeting for just a recommendation. It won't be the final report, but a recommendation to come forward to identify these priorities separately from operational report indicators, so that we can say to tenants in June, this is the baseline on these issues that you've identified that's important, and we're going to be able to report at the end of June, July, August, and ongoing as to the success or the movement on each of these key priorities that you have told us you would like us to focus on. So I've been able to provide this report to QTE. I wanted to provide it to the board as an item for information, so that we can move forward with the work to inform tenants more broadly about what has been said around the priorities of the corporation moving forward.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you, Lauren.
Any comments? Brenda?
I was really appreciative of this work, Arlene, yourself and others, and bravo to the tenants, because it's not easy to necessarily say what you think is needed, what should happen. I mean, we have our personal reflections, but it doesn't necessarily translate in being able to think about, what could change, what could happen. And I was quite impressed that there were modifications and changes to things they thought before when I went through the whole thing, and key things, like that hadn't been highlighted before. And I thought, well, bravo, someone's understanding this, and it's really good. This is why you do tenant engagement, is it truly can improve how you see things and how you operate, what changes that may need happening. I had one question about that chart, the recommendation summary. For the life of me, I couldn't read it. Priority area number 1 is what? Pest control?
Yes.
I don't, okay. And priority number 2 is unit upgrades.
And
priority number 3 is common area cleaning.
Yes, and that's just as it relates to property management. Okay. So the priority area is listed.
Oh, I see. I see.
Chart.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
no problem.
My little, and I want to note one thing, and I think it's obvious that there's going to be budget and financial implications for a lot of this. And I keep on saying my whole concern about you know, ISM, you know, the integrated service, I call it wraparound, sorry, is until you talk dollars about PSWs and healthcare workers, that's the only way people are going to age in place. And the issue of in-home housekeeping support is huge. It's my experience in managing these things is it's always better to have staff you can control other than relying on outside agencies, which come and go and often don't show up. That as well as pest control, I really do believe it should be a staff function to help tenants to move their articles in their households in order to, I mean, this is just mind boggling. We're still not doing this. This has been a long-standing issue, even in other experiences I've had. And I think this might be something we have to negotiate with the union, but it should be part of the job description that if you're elderly, how on earth do you expect me to move my entire kitchen and bathroom, which is the typical areas they spray first, let alone the rest of the apartment if it needs the rest. And it's not just once a year. They may have to respray a couple of times. So I think we really got to grab hold of these issues, which may have financial implications, but the quality of life that it represents is enormous, absolutely enormous. And and lots of things we can, like filing taxes. Canada Revenue will send over volunteers every year. You don't, this should have been done. I don't know why not. Some of the agencies do it. I know because I've done the taxes for seniors at Wood Green in buildings, seniors buildings. I've done it as a volunteer, but I know CRA can provide it as well. They have a roster of volunteers. So there's little things like that that can be easy wins, you know. And but I really appreciate all this and pulling it together, and quite insightful, and I think it's really good. We got to keep this front and center to keep us grounded.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Carrie.
Linda had her hand up first, so I'll.
Oh, sorry.
I'll be brief, Carrie, because I think I love your insights. But just actually, I think that what this does, though, Brenda, is that when you actually get priorities very clearly articulated from tenants, then it helps us with our budgeting, and that pest control is part of our mandate as the landlord. We will have to understand our mandate in terms of actually in-home services, because that actually isn't our mandate. But that would be our partnership pieces. And I think that you know, but I do want to actually concur with what you said, Brenda, that it was really helpful to actually see this, and I think that STAC actually members also appreciated not only the, you know, the content, but also being involved with this. And this is a beginning piece, but it's also us actually, it's a good metric for us in terms of, okay, I might think something is important, but it's like, okay, if the most important thing is this, then that should guide us. But you know, I think actually not only the content, but I think that the way that Arlene partnered with tenants right from the beginning is actually a good model for us to ensure that nothing about us
without us
is maintained.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Touche. Good point.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about us, with us, not for us, but getting the proper help. All of that, Linda, I completely concur. A great guideline going forward, and the way everyone was involved, and it was mentioned specifically in the STAC meeting by one individual, and then every head nodded in agreement that they feel for the first time they're being heard. And that is so critical. It's never happened before. And kudos to you, Arlene, for forging, you know, those relationships, because now it builds a little bit of credibility going forward with, you know, with tenants. So that was music to my ears, certainly.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I would just like to acknowledge that the being heard is not possible without the support of all the team members at Toronto Community Housing. They have been so very, very supportive in giving us access, setting up focus groups with tenants and with the city with STAC as well. Paul's team has been helpful in distributing information on our behalf, inviting me to meetings. So I just want to acknowledge that there is tremendous support with tenant engagement across Toronto Community Housing and across the city. And so while, you know, I'm the one that's reporting here, there are a lot of people doing a lot of work.
Arlene's army. Well, that's true. It always does take, you know, a lot, but it's just a great start. It really is.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah.
Jim, would you like to say something? Jim?
I only wish I could have been at that meeting. But because
We couldn't hear you.
Well, Jim, you said you couldn't make it because of work. I just want to let you know that, in fact, we had some technical difficulties, and in the future, I'm happy to do this. I ended up having to do a one-on-one consultation with a tenant because they just could not get into the meeting as part of our focus group. So I just sat and did a one-on-one with a tenant because it was just that important. It really is just that important. So
I'm looking forward to the summer and getting around and actually meeting and greeting tenants and hearing from them in person.
Yeah.
It's really important to do that.
Thanks, Jim. If we don't have any more comments, shall we move to the next item? That's agenda item 18. It's a report from the Corporate Governance and HR Committee. Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Lawrence. In summary, I'll say ditto. I kind of gave an overview of what we did earlier. I don't have much more to say than that. You know, we had a very fulsome discussion. We made a number of revisions to policies. They're in the document as blue, green, red, purple lines. I think they're very reflective of what this board needs. And I would ask everyone for their support. Thank you.
We need a motion to.
I'll move.
Yeah.
Paul?
Yeah. Okay,
Warren seconds.
Paul, and seconded by Linda, probably. Okay.
Warren.
I think Warren seconded.
Okay. All in agreement? Yeah. So it's carried.
Thank you.
Okay, so shall we move to the next item? That's the report from the Audit, Finance and Risk Committee. So that will be Audit, Finance and Risk Committee of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation held its first virtual public meeting on March 14th. The committee reviewed draft AFRC committee activities by month for the calendar years 2022 and 2023 that were developed by the interim finance lead, Norman Rees. Mr. Rees noted that development of an enterprise risk management framework for the corporation is not included in the draft activities. This ERM framework will likely be developed after the new CEO is in place. Other pieces that are not included are monitoring compliance with funding agreements and relevant legislation. The committee agreed to Mr. Rees's recommendation to quarterly reporting of the financial results, as board meetings are likely to be held quarterly next year. Mr. Rees plans to bring to the committee a series of policies and procedures related to finance and internal controls, such as expense reimbursement, capital expenses, investments, internal controls, and internal audit for approval in May. And these policies will largely mirror Toronto Community Housing Corporation policy and procedures template. In the closed session, Mr. Rees provided an overview of the financial transactions processing between TCHC and TSHC over the next few months until the technology impediments are removed and TSHC has a lease agreement with the TCHC. The following items will be recorded on TCHC's books of account and they will flow into TCHC's bank account. That's rental revenue, including the city subsidy, operating costs such as non-compensation, building and property specific expenses. Net of the rental income and operating costs will constitute our corporation's revenue on our books of account and will be flowed into our bank account. The following items will be recorded on our books of account and flow through our bank account. That is all TSHC employee compensation costs and related expenses, TSHC's new costs, that is interim staff, new permanent hires, etc. Certain minor TCHC non-building and property expenses and costs associated with the shared services between TSHC and TCHC. Mr. Rees informed that there are potential significant HST implications to both TSHC and TCHC relating to this transaction, and work is underway to understand those implications. Thank you. That's the end of my report. Any comments or? Brenda, you're muted.
Just a quick one. When you look at risk, are we only looking at financial risks, or are there other risks that we consider?
No. This ERM framework, it will cover all risks of the corporation, including your operational risks, finance risk, your reputational, all kinds of.
Okay. Okay.
Yes,
good. Thank you, because I wondered about that.
Yeah.
Never mind environmental. What happens when the next big hydro blackout happens, right?
If you're good with that, we'll move to the next agenda item. So that's item number 20, financial planning, financial results through February 28, 22, from Norman Rees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report is in front of you. It's rather brief. I want to draw your attention to just a couple of things. One is that we really are starting to ramp up expenditures. Things are compounding fairly rapidly, and so that's good. So we spent about $400,000 more in February than we did in January, and I suspect that that will continue to grow. And the second item is that just to expand upon what Lawrence said, the HST matters are a little bit complicated when you are an organization such as ours. So we are going through the process of applying to Canada Revenue Agency to become what is a determined municipality, and that will allow us to take advantage of the municipality rebate on HST, which is quite substantial. But that application process will take a number of months. And as well, given the HST transactions that are likely to occur between our organization and Toronto Community Housing, it's unlikely that we'll be in a rebate position until we become a landlord in the true sense with a lease agreement. And so it's possible that ACRA may do a retroactive, we could appeal retroactively to claim a rebate. But in being prudent and conservative, we have taken a full reserve of what that receivable might be for the corporation. And to the end of February, that's about $70,000. And then the final thing is that I wanted to mention was that we did receive in January the first half of our $2.8 million that we requested and the city approved for the period January to the end of May of 2022. And we're looking forward to seeing the second of those two payments in early April. So that's my report, Mr. Chair. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Rees? Brenda.
Have you had any indication from CRA whether they would give us a rebate, or is that just something we have to do through an appeal process?
Well, we haven't actually, we're still in the process of preparing the material to send to CRA. So we don't know. I mean, we don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Having heard none, let's move to the next agenda item. That's item number 21, the transition status and risk report, an informational update from Mary.
Thank you very much. So the good news is that we have no items in red in terms of our status report. And there are a few areas that I've indicated as being in yellow, which means it's basically a manageable delay. I believe that all of these things will be able to be dealt with in the next week or two. But for example, there were some items that were not resolved when we did the term sheet for the transition agreement. So they are outstanding. We are still working on the service delivery model, and we have to have that in order to do the schedules to the services delivery agreement. So I've just noted that those things are in yellow. All of them are in progress. I'm not really worried about them. So I think overall it's a very good status report. And you'll see that we have the summary of the greens and yellows that follow the overview that's in the report. The appendix is there for your information. I don't think you probably want to look at it, but these reports are built against planned work. So every month we have planned work, and what we're reporting on is whether we achieve that planned work, because we need to get it done in order to get to the end, and that's why we structure it that way. And we have given you the details if you happen to want to see them. In terms of April and May, we have had a very detailed planning process for these next 2 months with our entire team, and we have a very comprehensive checklist, which you will see as planned work for April and May in the next report. We have also met with TSHC. They also have a plan for April and May, and our two plans are quite well aligned. There were a couple of things in their plan that I am incorporating into our checklist just to make sure we have everything. But I think that both of the corporations are very focused on the same issues and things that we have to achieve in order to get to June 1. So overall, I think this has been an incredibly important month, March, and we're in very good shape to move forward. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mary. Brenda.
Thank you. Thanks, Mary. On one of your page 12 here, the MNP submitted final draft report and then the final report in the March to April period. We don't have that yet. Is that right?
We have a draft. Yes, we have a draft,
Right.
and TSHC has gone through that draft line by line and given us their comments. And I am in the process of doing the same thing with our team members. We will get that information back to MNP, and they will do the final report based on that input. And then we will be using that as the basis for developing the service delivery model and the service delivery schedules.
Right.
Of course, a consultant's report is a consultant's report at the end of the day. If there are things that we want to tweak a little bit as we're doing the service delivery schedules, we can certainly do that if anything comes to light. But overall, I think the report that we will get from MNP, having seen the draft, will give us a very solid foundation to develop the service delivery schedules.
And do we as a board see that final report?
Yes, there's no reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I think you'll probably see it next month at the same time that you see the draft schedules.
Okay.
So you will probably see the alignment between the report. There are some things in the MNP report that are not in quite sufficient detail for the service delivery schedules. And so we will be building some of those things out with a little more detail.
Okay. And the last question I had, I don't quite know where. You talked earlier when we were talking about the term sheets and service agreements about a if we can't resolve things, you go to some sort of mediation process, some sort of what's the phrase you used?
Yes, it's in the term sheet.
What's it called? Not conflict resolution. What do you call it?
Dispute resolution process.
Dispute resolution. Thank you.
Dispute resolution, yeah.
Right. So have we? That's not yet been finalized. What the form and shape of that process will be.
That's correct. It's one of the things that we need to finalize before we have the final agreement.
Okay.
There is some draft wording on those things, but it hasn't been entirely landed yet.
Okay. Are we worried about that at all, or?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it will be a fairly standard escalating dispute resolution mechanism.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you. Looks good.
Any other comments, questions? No, we heard none.
Just a quick thank you. Like it's really incredible work, and it just with the theme of gratitude to the team for all the work that they're doing. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, certainly, I agree with you. Yeah, thank you, Mary. I think we are quite ahead of the clock. We have some time on hand. Any other business to consider? No.
Hey, when does our office get finished? Are we further along in construction, or are we kind of stuck with this COVID delay?
No, on or about June 1st. I don't have a firm final date. It may be a bit before or a bit after. But the plan is it will be ready for the transition. And I think as the new CEO comes in place with the team, and there'll be staff there that will be able to populate that office with, of course, the return to work that's happening now.
Mm-hmm.
Return to office.
We're not doing the launch there either, so that's not an issue.
No.
Yeah, right. Thank goodness.
Good. Good. All good news today.
Jim.
In the future, will we be holding like live board meetings at the office of on Yonge Street?
Yes, we will have a facility there for us to hold board meetings there, or the other option.
The TSHC board meetings are at.
Pardon me?
The same meeting the same place that TSHC board meetings are at?
No, this would be at our new office location.
Young and Gerard.
Yeah, 423.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's even better.
Yeah.
That's walking distance.
If we have bigger meetings that we need, we probably have the option of using facilities at City Hall, I hope.
Great. Thank you.
Or can I just put in, I think having it in one of the buildings is like, there are some seniors buildings that do actually have bigger spaces. It's really nice actually for tenants when they actually see us, walking through the building. So College View is a good place to start, because at least actually you really do, when you walk into College View, you really are reminded that you're in a seniors building.
Yeah.
So maybe
Jim, it's right at the corner of College and Young.
College and Young, yeah.
Not down at Gerard, it's at College and Young.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Michael, will we still, given what we've learned through COVID and communication techniques, will we still have for each meeting the capacity for online communication? So if someone is not able to attend, they can still participate. Like,
Absolutely.
Will the technology be built into the meeting room? I think what we've learned is how we can do meetings. Not that they're necessarily the best way, but I think the ease and the extra supports, that come with electronic communication, I think should be built into anything going forward.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely, Brenda. I think we're going to see a more mixed approach
And
going
proper,
forward. And
proper
we
equipment.
actually, when you look at the board procedures policy that we approved today, we modified what
That's right.
might be seen as old language there in terms of in-person meetings and telephone, and just, allowed a more flexible approach to meetings that allows people to either be there in person, which I think is good if possible, but allows people to connect on.
Hybrid meetings.
Hybrid. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, well. Well, that was finished way ahead of time.
Yeah, so in that case, if you don't have anything else, it's time for adjournment. So need a motion. Who would like to move it?
I move.
That's Brenda, and seconded by
Harry?
Carrie. Yeah. So all in favor? Carried. And thank you all. We'll be adjourning this meeting. We'll be meeting.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks.
Chair.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Have a
Thanks,
great day.
Lawrence.
Stay
Thanks,
safe
Lawrence.
with your families too.
Bye-bye. Take care, everyone. Keep safe.
Yes.
I'm gonna do